My family came from Waterford. My mother's people came from Barrack Street. Her father was Michael Norris, and there's a corner there, Norris's Corner. And she had a brother who died young, and so she was the only child. So when he decided to retire, he came to Tramore and bought a field and put this house in it. And we had been living on the quay in Waterford. My father had a shop there, seeds and groceries and things, and so we moved up to Barrack Street. But the old pair who retired were only a few years here, and she died. She got cancer and she died. So we came out to the funeral, and I was left here with him to keep him company, aged 9 years of age. And to me, he was a very old man then. He probably wasn't so old because he lived for many years afterwards, but I thought he was very old. And I had been going to the Ursuline school in Waterford, and then when I came here there was a private school in Tramore called Miss Harty's, and I went there where there weren't many children. I'd have been far better off up in the national school where I'd make friends. But I was very lucky. The Malloy family lived over the road, and there were a lot of girls there, and I made friends with them, so that was very helpful to me. At that time then, there was no secondary school.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'll see you. Yeah. There was no secondary school in Tramore, so if you wanted to go to secondary school you had to go away. So my brothers went to Clongowes, and my sister and I went to Signhill in Dublin.
And when you came out here at 9 years of age, had you been coming out here in the summer
Yes,
anyway?
we had, yes, yeah. I can remember when it was, this was a field and there were poppies. I remember being sent over there to dig out the poppies, I suppose 8 years perhaps, yeah.
And coming from Waterford out to Tramore at that age, did it seem like a very small place to you?
No, well, I, as a child living in Barrack Street, I didn't mix in that I wasn't friends with any children around. I went to the Ursuline, and my friend was Mary O'Rourke, whose parents lived in the waterworks. He was the manager or whatever, and they lived in a house there. And it was a lovely place to play, it was huge with all the water, and I still remember the smells from there. The mint and thyme and all that grew there. I think grew wild, I suppose, and in that way it was lovely.
This is up by Welsh Park?
Yeah,
okay.
Up above that, yeah, just above that. Now, that was the sports field, it was called then, and they had a few GA matches there.
And
but
there's a connection between that pitch and your family, was it?
Yes, my grandfather gave them the land, as far as I know, gave them that field, because I remember asking, that man, he's dead since, but he was very involved in the GAA, why they called it Welsh Park, and he said there was a referee, a very well-known referee, Welsh, and they called it after him.
And the man who gave that field then to
Michael Norris.
Was Michael
my
Norris.
grandfather.
Was he known as a Terry man? Or?
No, that was the field side.
Okay.
That was different. That was my father's family. They had a pub on the quay, further down from where we were. We were 36 the quay, where the bus office was afterwards, where the Indian restaurant is now. I was born there, but his family had what was the Rob Roy bar further down, and I think he became his own best customer. So they bought a farm out in Whitfield, and he was put out there with the housekeeper, and Granny ran the pub, presumably. Now I don't remember, I was too young to know any of that, and I don't know what year he died, although he's buried out in Butlerstown, but I never knew him. And I asked my father about the tarry man, and he said his explanation was that it was just a mistake. There was a poor man who lived in a shed out in Whitfield, possibly on their land, I don't know. And he was actually the Tarry man, but they got them mixed up between the two. And certainly, my father or his father, and then he were kind of known as the Tarry man. But Daddy said it wasn't actually them at all.
But he used to go around with a kind of a captain's hat on, or something like, or did he have something like a?
Who? The grandfather?
No,
my father didn't have anything.
Did one of your family have a yacht or something like that? Or something?
Oh, his father. Yeah, his father would have had. He did have at some stage, because my father told me that's how he learned to swim. He was thrown in off the yacht and told to swim.
And there's another really interesting connection with your family and Irish history.
Oh, yes. I mean, they were obviously... very intelligent. They came from a small farm. This is my grandmother now. Came from a small farm. They were powers, wise power. Some of the family became known as afterwards. But they all went to college, and that must have been unusual in that time. Some of her brothers got into trouble, I'd say politically, and they went to Australia, 2 of them, or maybe 3, and they never came back. Some of their family came over, quite some years ago, and I was saying, would they not come back? And she said, no, her father always said he'd never come back to Ireland. So they probably had a very rough time.
And then John Wise Power became quite famous for a number of reasons.
Yes, he was the editor of the Irish Nationalist, wasn't it? And his wife was very involved in the movement. And then his daughter Nancy was involved with her mother, Jenny, in that. And there was a son, and he was Judge Wise Power. I don't think he was involved in the troubles, as they called them, but the women were.
The signing of the...
Oh, yes. It was written up in Jenny's premises in Abbey Street in Dublin. There's a plaque there. Haughey had a plaque put up, but it wasn't actually signed there, but it was drawn up there. There was a room upstairs where they used to meet.
Proclamation.
Yeah, the proclamation, yeah.
Okay. And then he was also involved in the founding of the GA.
Oh, he was, yeah. That was founded in a hotel Heron's Hotel in Thurles, wasn't it? And there were a few of them, but they needed a few more, and a reporter or somebody was dragged in to make up 6. I think they needed 6 to have a quorum or something. But he was a founder member, yeah. That was John.
And just to come back then to Tramore, like, when you were a child coming out here, was it kind of like, where did you go swimming?
We went to the pier, and we learned to swim over there, and there was a dad who lived across in South Park, and he taught me didn't he? I think maybe he didn't. He taught my children to swim. I can't remember who taught me to swim, or maybe, but we did learn to swim. We learned life-saving. The life-saving come for a week and teach, and we did life-saving. And we certainly learned. We went to the pier in the summer every day, hail, rain or snow, the Malloys and myself, okay. Yeah.
And then... where else would you go around the area here? Because probably very close here was this Green Fields, was it?
Yes. At the end of the Priest Road now there's a house, and behind that there are houses. Well, they were just fields when I was young. We would go over there and climb over the wall and go over to the tennis club. But to go to the tennis club now you have to walk around the road. But we just went across the field, And the same to the golf links. We went up, and there was a woman up there, Dunphy, and she had chickens and that, and we just walked through her farm to get to the golf links, yeah. Where it's all Tramore Heights, all those houses are built on it. Then.
So your social life was kind of around, kind of like
yes,
the tennis, the golf,
yes,
swimming. Okay.
Yeah.
And when would you have like for example, would there be certain times of year where there was kind of more? We say, for example, would it be the race week, or when was the big kind of?
Oh, the race week was they always said the sun always shone for the race. It didn't, of course, but that was the fallacy anyway. And that was the big race. But I mean, there was down around once I got older. I absolutely loved down around. You know, the swinging boats, I suppose we started on, and then the thing that goes around, and we walked our way up then to the slot machines, and that, you know, that's what we did in the summer.
Did you get to the dances?
Oh, we got to the dances. There were 2 sessions in the Atlantic Ballroom, one from 8, I think, till 11, and the second session at 11:30 to what? I suppose 1:30, I don't know. And that's where I met my husband. I loved dancing, and I used to go down. They'd go to bed here, and I'd hop out the window. As you see, we live in a bungalow. My bedroom was down there. I'd hop out the window and over to Malloy's to meet them, and we'd go down. And that's where I met my husband. I was 16. Yeah.
And what was he doing there?
He was down on holidays. Yeah.
Oh.
With his brother and another fellow. Yeah.
Oh, were they staying here?
They were staying. Yes, they were. Mrs. Dooley, who the Dooleys now own a lot of some of the amusements and the fish and chip shop. The Dooleys, they were. He was working. The Itons had come during the war. There were English families here, and a lot of them were in entertainment, you know, that kind. And they had all the entertainment down around. We always called it, and this man Dooley came from Cork to work there, and one of the Itons then married him. So, and they lived down in Tivoli Terrace, and she kept people in the summer, you know. And that's where my husband and his brother and friend, they stayed there. And the following year they came back again, and his friend met his wife there. There were 2 girls staying in the place from Dublin, and they married. He's dead now. And so they must have quite a few matches made, I'd say, down in the Atlantic Ballroom, yeah.
And at 16, like, did you know when you met him that you really liked him at that stage?
I need to make one adjustment for that, Michael. So just take a pause.
So your husband,
Yeah.
your future husband,
Yeah.
was staying down in Tremor,
Yes.
and you said that he was quite a bit older than you.
He was, yeah. I suppose that attracted me to him, because up to that I only knew kind of boys my own age, really, you know. Yeah.
Okay. And you went after him?
I'd say so, yeah.
That's interesting. And there was nobody thought that was strange or different in those days.
Oh, they didn't know at home that I was getting out the window and going. They didn't know anything about him at that stage. And then I talked them into letting me go. All the family had kind of gone. Nancy was gone to Dublin, and I had a brother, Michael, who was just older than me, and he had gone off to be a priest, you know. They were kind of lonely here. At this stage now, my mother had moved out here, and she lived with my grandfather, my mother and father, I think, and Robert then was in Barrack Street. That was it, and he had a girlfriend, and so he got married that April, and I got married the following September. Now, my older sister Nancy was to get married, but her husband's father died, and they couldn't get married for a year. So they tell me that I decided I wasn't waiting another year, I'd get married instead of her. That's what they tell me anyway. I said, so I got married. I didn't have to get married, as they used to say. Michael wasn't born. We were married in 52, and Michael was born in 54. So it wasn't a case of having to get married, but we got married, yeah.
And you were 18, was it?
I was 18. We're 65 years married now. We'll be 60,
Wow.
66 years, yeah. We're married, is that right too? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you like Dublin when you were up there?
Oh, I did. Well, I knew Dublin because I'd been at school in Dublin. I'd been in Sign Hill, and my aunts were in, I had a load of aunts in Dublin. Auntie Nan was out in Orwell Park, and Auntie Joan and Auntie Kathleen had houses beside each other down in Leeson Street, and Auntie Kathleen was very good. She used to have me in for lunch on Sunday from Sign Hill, and I remember one Sunday I thought the food on Sign Hill was terrible. I was used to good food, and of course we had a shop, so we had jam and butter and that kind of thing, whereas in school we got this awful margarine. And but when I went, I wouldn't eat all the week with herself. When I went into Auntie Kathleen's on a Sunday, I remember one time she had steak and kidney pie, and she said to me, would you like more? Hadn't given me, I suppose, twice as much as she gave herself. And I said, I'd love more. So she gave to me. Now she said, you've eaten my tomorrow's dinner. I didn't care. Very simple, but she was very nice. And Granny then, subsequently then, when I was in Sign Hill, Uncle Jim died. Granny was living in Tremore, down on Bellevue Terrace in Auntie Maureen. But Uncle Jim, my uncle, who was a doctor up in Kerry, he died, and Granny moved up in with Auntie Joan. So I used to spend an evening with Granny. Every Thursday I went in, and I'd often go. And at that time, Phoenix Park races, there was a lovely race course there, and my sister's husband was in the bank, and he was into the horses, and he used to go and he'd collect the money from the tote. We'd go in a taxi, and we'd come home in a taxi. I suppose we got there ourselves, but we'd come home in a taxi with the money to the bank and put it in the safe in the bank. So I used to meet the aunts at the races. They were always keen on the race in Phoenix Park,
They're all gamblers then?
I wouldn't say that they gambled a lot, but they were interested. They knew the families that owned the horses. And that
so they got inside information?
Yes, a bit of that, yeah.
And come here, Joe, when you were back to when you were in Tremore first,
yeah.
Would you have any memory of going into the shops at that time, into town?
Into Waterford?
No, here in Tremore.
Oh yes, there wasn't a whole lot. Now, the L&N, we didn't go there. O'Brien's we went to, because O'Brien's was in Waterford, and I suppose my family knew them. But the L&N had a shop in Tremore. That's London and Newcastle, isn't it? They'd come down from the north, and that was the Protestant shop. You didn't go into that. I would say I was never in it in my life, but there was very much the Protestant and us. Although when it came to selling flags, that they don't do it much now. When I was young, every Sunday you were up, they'd come and ask my grandfather, of course she'll sell flags for you. I was never asked. They'd ask him, of course she will. What time would you like her there? Up there's every mass selling these fucking flags, and the Protestants had no trouble asking me to sell the flags, but other than that I had nothing to do with them.
And so there was definitely a kind of two separate
there was, yeah.
communities out there.
Absolutely. Now, I don't think I knew any Protestants. Yeah, that's their church, yeah, and ours is up here. And there were quite a few, there'd be very few Protestants as like here now. But then, and there was a Protestant school there. So there were quite a few. Now, at that time, I didn't know there was a difference between Church of England and Presbyterians and whatever. I'd say they all just went to the same school. They went here and then they'd go into Newtown, I suppose.
And I mean, I suppose it was like that too in Waterford City too, where
yes,
the certain places where, like for example, someone told us a story before about in Denny's, a man told us he was the first Catholic to get employed at the office.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
That it was only all the office staff in Denny's were
Protestants. Oh, I see.
So
I
they
would
looked after their own.
Yes. Oh yes, they did. I'm sure. Yeah.
And would you think that was because you were coming from a very Republican family that you?
I wouldn't think Republican had anything to do with it. It was more religious.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just how they were brought up. There was a scandal one time. She was an aunt of mine, and I think he was married. I don't know. This was when I came to Tremore first, and she was going out with this man. Well, he was a Protestant, and B, I think he was married, but it was a fierce scandal, and it had to end, and it did end, and I don't think she ever really recovered from it. But I was a bit young to know any of the details, but I know that it happened. Like,
And would you, the other way, the Tremor people and all that kind of stuff, would they kind of keep away from the Waterford crowd that came out, or would they mix and all that? How would that? You know, the summertime.
yeah, I know. No, we thought. Well, now my I wouldn't know about down here because we went to the pier, and from swimming every day, and I was as brown as a berry, and I remember two girls from Waterford coming out, and one said to the other, "Look at her! Wait till you see that'll all wash off her when she gets into the water." And that put me off Waterford people. I thought, oh my God, they're dreadful. Forgetting, of course, that I had been born in Waterford. It was just the kind that came out. Now, they didn't mostly walk, or they would have had to walk from the train station all the way over to the pier. So they really didn't. The pier was like a club of our own, Tremor people.
Would you ever go to
we would go to Newtown. Now, we never went near the Gilliman because that was reserved for the priests, Jesuit priests used to come down or something. It was men only was written, and we would never go there. But we went to Newtown Cove a lot. But it was a walk out. If you were just going for the swim, you would go to the pier, But at the weekend, we might go out to Newtown.
And would you see yourself as Tremor or Waterford?
Oh, I'm afraid I see myself as Tremor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But would Tremor people see you as Tremor?
I've no idea. No, never even crossed my mind. Yeah.
But you're here since you were 9.
9, yeah, that's a long time. Well, no, I was when I was married. First we lived in Dublin, then we went to Donegal. But Donegal was an awful long way from here, and Mummy wasn't well, and I was on to rather try and get down near her. So she was 3 weeks dead when Carlo came up, and Arthur got Carlo, so I moved back and he commuted to Carlo, and when there was a vacancy in Waterford he got it, and we're here still. I said he was movable, but I wasn't. I was quite happy here.
And what are, like you mentioned the dances, but what was the cinema? Was the cinema open?
The Silver Slipper Cinema. Oh yes, that's another dreadful thing I did when we, as I say, we came out from my grandmother's funeral, and it was all fuss, and they didn't mind about us. So she was being buried from here up. Oh no, she went out to Butlerstown, but we weren't included anyway in the cars or whatever. We went to the pictures in Silver Slipper when I can remember walking out and hearing the bell ringing for the funeral, and I said, with my brother, and we had cousins living across the Howlett. Mrs. Howlett would have been a first cousin of my mother's, and the Howletts were with us, right, the 4 of us, and I said, oh God, that's grand, we can go home now, it's all over. So I was very concerned because they were gone out of the house and we could come home. But when we told my mother that we went to the picture, she was horrified. She really didn't know. We were very innocent, we were young. As I say, I was 9 and Michael was probably 10 or 11. But we thought we were only passing the afternoon, And yeah, there was a cinema in the Silver Slipper then. The other one wasn't open at all then.
Down on the main beach, do you remember the bathing boxes?
Oh, I do. They were all there when I was young, yeah. And you could buy boiling water. And there were women there, and they could be very cross. Now, I needn't tell you, we never took a bathing box. But you would hear them, and they ran the place now. And there was a man over in the pier, Mr. O'Brien, and he kept that in order too. There was no rough stuff or anything. In fact, at that time there was a lovely young fellow, and somebody pushed him off the pier, and he was paralysed. He was in a wheelchair all his life. Now he went on and did music, and he taught music in the School of Music in Kylemore afterwards. But it was an awful thing to happen, They weren't trying to do that, push you in, but he just must have landed awkwardly and damaged his spine and spent the rest of his life, yeah.
And I mean, have you seen an awful lot of changes in Tremor from when you were in
Well,
Dublin?
more houses. There's so many more people here now. I mean, it was relatively small then, you know, very small.
And would you remember any of the older characters around when you were a child? People that
There was a fellow, Sticky Backy, who took photographs, you know, and you walk along the street, he'd take a photograph. And
then sell it.
oh yeah, you could buy it, yeah, or you could go in and look at it. If you didn't like it, you didn't buy it, yeah. Sticky Backy had a funny place down there. It's down across from the Cuckoo's Nest, and then there was what they call Limerick Bill. I don't know, maybe originally he came from Limerick, but he was a caddie and he used to go to the golf links. He used to be up in the golf links. I don't know where he came from originally. There weren't that, well, if there were, I didn't really know them, characters around. I'm sure there were.
Mm-hmm. And would you get fish and all that from the pier? Or would you get,
oh yes, they would. They now we didn't have a boat and we didn't fish, but they'd come along selling mackerel, you know, that they'd caught. Kylie's lived down there, and they'd go out fishing in the morning, and they'd be over the corner with a box of fresh mackerel that they'd caught that morning, selling them, you know. Or sometimes they'd give you some if you were over there, you know.
And where would you if you were going off on a picnic somewhere, where would you go? Or would it be around this area?
There was very little picnics I went on. Out to Newtown Cove and sit on the grass, and that's where you'd have your picnic, yeah. That's what.
And was there any, like, you said you went to this private school?
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, that
Miss
must be
Harty's. She had a monkey. She must have been out foreign. I know nothing about her. She was very odd. I mean, she was very different. I don't mean odd, but she was very different. But there was she had a local young woman teaching there, and she was very nice. And you were all mixed up. So, like, I went there at 9, and I went away to school then. I think when I was 11. Maybe I was 12, and I had still done some of Shakespeare's plays and that. Like, it was, they were older than me, you see, but you all kind of did pretty much the same stuff, you know. Of course, she did no Irish. She knew no Irish. I think maybe she was English, although she was Miss Hartley. She possibly was from around here. I have no idea where she came from.
And she had a monkey, you said?
Oh, she had a monkey, yeah. Now, the monkey luckily died shortly after I went. I didn't see much of him, but he used to be around. She must have been out foreign someplace and brought this fellow home. And she was very upset about the monkey dying. But anyway, I didn't have anything to do with the monkey. Maybe he was sick when I went. But they used to talk about him. I know she had him. Yeah.
And to go from Miss Hartley's then up to Dublin to
Sign Hill, yeah.
Was that a big shock?
Well, my sister had gone before me, and she was still there. She did a year domestic economy, and so she was there. And no, I liked it, you know. You'd company, there were other girls and that kind of thing, but I always felt the cold, and it was very cold. I felt the cold there very much. It was huge dormitories, you know, and while they had radiators, they weren't sufficient for the size of the room, you know. It would be very cold there in winter.
And, well, like, did you, I mean, was it kind of a tradition in your family that people went away to boarding schools and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I think my aunts did, because there was no secondary schools, you know. If you wanted to go on, and the assumption was that you'd go to college, I was never interested in going to college. I just kind of wanted to get away from, get away from home, or I wasn't. I intended doing domestic economy. I was always interested in making the dolls' clothes and cooking and that kind of thing. So then I got married and did domestic for the rest of my life, yeah. But I had intended going to Sign Hill and doing domestic there, you know. because they had a college, a domestic instructor's college. That's where you went to train as a teacher for domestic science.
And yet your next generation then are very active.
Yeah,
One of your
they weren't
daughters.
all. Yeah, they weren't all. Yeah. Louise went to Trinity, and then Jackie, the next one, decided she'd rather go to college in France, and she went to college in France for a while, and then she gave that up. And Linda went to Trinity, and Michael went to Michael, who should have gone but wouldn't go. Michael was always Michael, and he wouldn't do the norm.
And was there any problem, like in your family, about the idea of Trinity? Because Trinity was seen as a Protestant university.
Well, it was the best at the same time, and we went to the best. Now, my aunts would have gone to. It wasn't an option in my aunt's time because Catholics couldn't go. But by the time Louise went, she could go. And Louise Richardson was grand, except just she was Louise Mary Richardson.
That gave her away.
That gave her away instantly. She said I remember her saying there were only 2 Catholics in her class. But of course that all changed. I'd say by the time Linda went, there was quite a mix, I'd say.
Okay. And just, I mean, I know you spoke about how much how a lot more houses in Tramore. Is there anything else that you've kind of noticed about how it's changed, or?
No, there was always a GA here. There was a school teacher, Mr. Kennedy, over there, and where we have the Bridge Centre now. It wasn't the GA. What were they called? What was an Irish kind of? They'd have Cayleys and that kind of thing there. I'm not sure.
Like
maybe it was GA. There were 2 separate places, like downstairs and upstairs. Now, when we bought it afterwards for the Bridge Club, we had to put up the stairs, but they actually were 2 different buildings then, and certainly one of them was some way attached to Irish and that.
Okay. And did you ever get away, like, when you were young, did you ever get off to any other country?
No, I mean, we went to go to Dublin was a big thing. We went to Dublin. They used to have the tattoos there. Did you ever hear them? Military tattoos. They were there, and we would go up and stay in Dublin and go to the. Now they were terrific, but they died off, didn't they? They haven't had those for years. But that was just after the war, I suppose, and it was all very military. That's all we did. We went to Dublin, to the tattoo, No.
And the Tramore train, that was very
Oh yes, that was, yeah.
What's your memory of that?
Well, when I was living here, I would go in certainly on a Saturday afternoon, probably to go to the pictures or maybe to walk up to Barrack Street, Certainly I used it. And when my grandfather retired first, he had a car, but I don't know why he didn't drive in. He used to go down and get the train in and walk up. I don't know why really he did that, but like when I was young, even when I was on the quay, he had a car, because I was sick one time and I was brought up to the Fever Hospital in Waterford, and he drove me up, and on a Sunday we would go for a drive with them. We'd go up to Curramore. Where's this Shell House? Is that in Curramore?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember going up there with Mike Norris and his wife Julia. Now, she wasn't my mother's mother. My mother's mother died when she was 6 weeks old and left him with 2 infants, So he subsequently married his friend's sister, Julia. She had been Whittle Prior's Knock in Waterford, if you know it. It's not far from Barrack Street, it's down a hill. Not sure what you call it. But when I was young then, they built corporation houses there, and it was known as Chinatown. I have no idea what the real name of it is, but I used to go from Barrack Street, from that corner, down to Prior's Knock, again for company, because there was no garden or anything on Norris's corner. And I used to go down there, and they delivered milk all over Waterford, and I would go with one of them delivering the milk. Yeah, I used to love that.
Oh, was that like a horse and cart, or was it?
Oh yeah, I think a donkey and cart, more than a horse, I think, originally, and then they got vans.
Would that be like out of a tin?
Oh, it was, yeah, and the tilly. Yes, yeah, I was very young. I left at 9, yeah, but she used to take me off doing that, yeah.
Was it Mrs. Whittle?
No, she was Mary Whittle. Now, she subsequently married a Morgan. She's dead now, and she was Mrs. Morgan. They bought a place out around Pilltown, Kilmacow, I think, out that way anyway. They're still there, Morgans, but they'd originally come from Gray's Jew. Morgan's Gray's Jew, I don't know if you knew them. Like, I'm very bad, I didn't go into any, I just wasn't interested, yeah.
Well, that's really interesting, just a whole picture you have to give them. Julie, that's great.
Dude, it's not.
Oh, no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's like a whole wide range of picture of a time.
Yeah, it was very different. Everything was much smaller. I mean, we were lucky. We had a radio, and that's all. And then, of course, when somebody died, you weren't allowed to put on the radio, God. All this kind of thing. And
like it was like a year mourning kind of.
Oh yes, yeah. You had to wear black. And I didn't have to. My mother did. And when would you get out of the black and that kind of thing, But she was lucky. When I came out first, Thursday was half day in Waterford, and she was come out on a Thursday afternoon and a Sunday. But other than that, I was here with my grandfather. Now, a woman, that man O'Brien, his daughter came in every day and looked after us and cooked and that. And I started reading then, and I've reading all my life. I had nothing else to do here.
And would that be library books?
Oh yes, there's a big house at the end. There's a dentist in it now, but there was a lovely family there, and they had loads of books. You went in and they used to let me. I used to go nearly every day. I'd read a book every day or everything. Then they moved. It got a bit bigger, I suppose, and they moved down the town to the main street. They took a little room in the main street, and I read anything and everything. And at that time, Gone with the Wind, the film Gone with the Wind came out. Of course, I wasn't allowed to go. Oh, not at all. I was too young, and. I needn't tell you, I went in, I can't remember how or with whom, but I went anyway. And then they were talking about it, and I let the cat out of the bag by saying, "Oh, do you remember the time such and such?" But I'd read the book. I used to put brown paper covers on the books. My mother didn't know what I was reading. Well, she wasn't here anyway, but I'd read Gone with the Wind anyway. Which was, I suppose, it was absolutely harmless by today's standards, but then it was supposed to be very risky.
And the brown cover was so people wouldn't know what you're reading.
Yeah. Oh yes. And the same even when I went to Sign Hill, I was always reading things, but I'd have a brown paper cover, or there was a big study hall, and I'd have the books up in front of me. I'd read true detectives and true stories. I'd read anything other than the books I was supposed to be studying. So I was never going to be an academic. I definitely wasn't. And of course my Auntie Catherine had been friends with Mother Rose, who was the principal of the school, and great was expected of me, but I was not going to, I just wasn't interested at all, really.
And just about the role of women, I mean, because
yes.
I mean, women had a very particular set kind of.
Oh yes, they were nothing. Women were really, I didn't know at that time any strong women, really. No, women were very down, no, I didn't.
And the men ruled
The men ruled everything, they did, yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly my mother, she never stopped living. She was all the time looking after her father. Why that was, I really don't know. But that was it. Oh, she wouldn't do anything. Oh, she'd wait till he was gone. She would wait till he was gone. I needn't tell you she was dead before him. Well, I wasn't going to make the same mistake. You know, because I saw it happen to her, and I say, before she died, she was very sorry. I say she was quite bitter because she literally had, she wouldn't go here, she wouldn't go there, and he became quite possessive of her. I remember, I mean, I'd say I was married and say, there's such a good picture on, go to that picture. And then I'd say, did you go to the picture? Oh, he didn't want me to go. And so she didn't go, you know. Yeah, they were completely ruled. Well, the women, my mother was. Now, I wouldn't say the same for my aunts and that. I don't think they were like that, you know. Auntie Nana was a great character, Joan's mother, you know, she was lovely. And she and my father were great pals because I think he was older than her, and she'd only be allowed to go to the dance. She loved dancing if he was going, you know, so they were great pals. They went to the dances at that time. There wouldn't have been that many dances, I'm sure. Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, when we're talking about it, I mean, the church was very powerful.
Oh, very powerful. Absolutely very powerful. Yeah. And we were very friendly with my grandfather was. That new church, he gave the land for that Holy Family Church. I don't know what the man ever did in his life. I was dead curious to know, but he had a fierce, guilty conscience. When I was young, I'd be sent over. There was a lovely Father Pat Ahern here, and I'd be sent over with a note to Pat Ahern to come over to hear his confession. Well, the man would hardly have been outside the door in the week, and I'd be sent over the next week. Yeah, I couldn't, I don't know. I say he put me off religion, but, and then there was a father, I shouldn't, God, if some of my relations there, I better not say what I was going to say, but it was very strong, yeah, it really was. Whenever they wanted money for anything, now he had given as I say, he gave the land, and they had to take some land off the people in the small houses up Slieve Keel. Now I think he owned those houses too, and he gave them money to give the bit of land to the church, and then he had already put in an altar down in Ballybricken for Uncle Pat, my uncle that died, and they wanted an altar, the money for the altar. He put the altar up, and I can still remember Monsignor, what's his name? Keane, I think. Anyway, him coming out, and he wanted money for the station, so he had to get money for the station. So at one stage my grandfather was one of the richest men in Waterford, and he ended up with nothing. He gave it all to the church.
Well, he must have gone straight to heaven.
Well, if you can buy your way in, yeah, that's how he got there all right, but I don't know where he is. Poor man, I wouldn't say he ever did anything, but he made all his money because the English barracks was across where those houses are. You know, at the top of Barrack Street, there's, what do you call them? There's a row of houses, and they go around in a cul-de-sac. They go around there.
Yes, there was two barracks there. There was the
infantry
barracks. And
there was a barracks there anyway, and they bought everything from him. And they bought whiskey by the gallon, because he used to talk about all the terrible price of whiskey now, at that time when I was young, and what it used to be, something like 3p a gallon or something like that. But he supplied everything. Now, down lower, you know, there's a pub. Doyle's, yeah. Behind Doyle's, he had a place there, and at one stage he had a bakery there, and he made lemonade and that in another part of it, because there was a man working in Barrack Street, Jack Mountain was his name. He was just jack of all trades. He did everything around the place, and he'd bring me with him going down there, and that we had a dog, and we came home one day and left the dog. Anyway, we were home and the dog was missing, and I don't know why it didn't occur to him where the dog was. But a week later we went down, here's the poor dog. Well, Howard Doyles didn't hear the dog bark, and he was only a skeleton, but we took him home and he recovered. I always remember leaving the dog down.
Now, wasn't there a story too about the GA pitch that was originally a soccer pitch for the British soldiers or something, was it?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know. What, you mean the Gaelic field?
Yeah, that he bought it off the British Army and gave it to the GA or something.
Oh, well, I don't know that.
I
just heard that it was he gave it to them, but I don't know.
Okay.
How he came to buy it, yeah. Anything that came up down there, he was probably the only one with money, you know. And I mean, he would have started small. He was apprentice in Egan's. Egan's was the big place downtown, and I'd say he went in there about 14, and you lived there. And he used to tell us about it. You just did everything, and so he learned the trade. Like that, and I don't know at what stage he bought up where he started up there. I don't know those kind of details. We didn't kind of talk to him. I think I was kind of afraid of him. We didn't talk. We didn't ask about long ago, you know. Well, it's like now my own children don't ask me anything about long ago. They've no interest in it, really. And it's only when people are gone then you think, oh, I should have asked them.
Yeah. Well, Julie, thanks very much.
Well, now I hope that doesn't appear in anything. That's all.
In a law case.
I hope it doesn't.
You'll be sued.
Are you sure about the cup of tea?
No, I'm fine, because he has to get into
he
has to get into a thing in
The appointment in town.
ATB, what do you call that club?